Hi everyone, Allie here from The Family Meeple. Today I am back with the third and final solo ranking for 2022. If you are new to the channel, in 2022 I set myself 3 separate 10x5 solo challenges throughout the year. Each of the challenges ran 4 months, with the first one starting in January and the last one starting in September. The last challenge starting in September ran through the end of the year, and the 10 games that I played are the ones that you see in front of you right now. If you are new, I would highly encourage you to go back and check out the videos for the first 20 games that I played last year during the first 2 challenges and see how I ranked those. But today we're going to be talking about the 10 games in front of me here, which I played, like I said, between September and December. Each of these was played solo 5 times, and I was able to get through all of my plays before the end of the year. Even though I had company in town, it was a little bit of a push at the end to get the last ones played. So I'm going to clear off the table, and I will come back with the first game in my ranking, which is number 10. Alright, coming in at number 10 is Cryptid Cafe, which is a game that was published by Squatchy Games and is also available in retail from 25th Century Games. Cryptid Cafe was designed by Chip Cole and Lennon Cole, and I don't remember who the artwork is by. I think it might also be by them. But Cryptid Cafe is a worker placement, set collection, resource management game where you are playing as cryptid or monster servers in a cafe. Your goal is to serve all of your customers, and you will be doing this by placing out your workers onto one of 5 stations in a central board. The stations are numbered 1 through 3, and you will be placing your worker depending on how many of each of the different dishes that you are wanting. So in the solo mode, you are theoretically playing against another opponent, and there's 2 other AI characters that are going to be placing cryptid servers out onto the board along with you to kind of block where you're going and take the things that you were wanting to get for your customers. But the solo fell a little bit flat for me. It was very, very simple. It was easy to run, which made it, fine to play, but it didn't offer a big challenge for me. When you were placing the servers out, you're rolling a dice to see if they're going to skip ahead of you in line by tipping the cook. But you could also kind of manipulate that and tip the cook. I didn't have any of my plays where I felt overly challenged with this solo mode. That being said, I do like the game. I have not had a chance to play it multiplayer yet, but I bought this one primarily for my daughters to play because they're really into cryptid characters and spooky Halloween type themes. My youngest in particular loves the Wendigo as a cryptid character. So this is really one that I picked up to play with my family and not one that I was primarily looking to play solo as one for my collection. And like I said, it's a fine solo mode. It's just, it wasn't for me. I would like to see one where it has a little bit more of a challenge in the scoring for the AI character. There were very few opportunities for the AI character to score any points, and it didn't feel like I needed to really strategize in order to hold points back from them. So that is Cryptid Cafe. This one is coming in at number 10. It is staying in my collection, like I said, for multiplayer. I do plan on playing this with my daughters. The production is top-notch, and it's one that I'm looking forward to playing multiplayer this year. So Cryptid Cafe, number 10. Coming in at number 9 is Dragon Castle. Dragon Castle is published by Come On Games and Horrible Guild. This is actually a game that's been in my collection for several years now. This was one of the first games that I picked up after watching Tabletop with Will Wheaton. It has absolutely stunningly gorgeous artwork. This is one of my absolute favorite board game covers. The artist is Sin Yi Chu, which is one of my favorite. I just love all of her art in this game and in several other games. Actually, she's one of the few artists that I follow on Instagram and other channels just to see what she's doing. Stunning artwork. The game is designed by Lorenzo Silva, Hjalmar Hawk, and Luca Ricci. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any of those names. For anyone who's not familiar with Dragon Castle, this is an abstract strategy tile game, and it uses these mahjong style tiles that are white, and they have different patterns on them and different colors with different numbers of objects on them, or different patterns of the, like some of them are dragons, the purple or pink dragon tiles. It also has special dragon powers and animal powers that you can use to vary up your game. This is originally a game that is designed for 2 to 4 players, and I have played it at 2 to 4 players, both my physical copy as well as the implementation on Board Game Arena, and they have a nice digital app for this game. They also came out with an official solo mode, which you can download from, I think Board Game Geek is where I got it from, but you can probably find it on their website as well. And the solo mode is a beat your own score. And what it does is you will select tiles from, you build up these mahjong tiles into kind of like a mahjong board pattern where you build in this dragon castle, which is what they call it. There's several different patterns that you can use. But essentially, you can only draft tiles that are accessible from the top of the display, the Dragon Castle, or from the lower ones if you're matching. So you will play your game basically exactly the same as you would in a multiplayer game by drafting tiles. And when you draft the tiles, the solo mode doesn't really have an AI player, but it does take tiles from the Dragon Castle so that the game proceeds more quickly. And what happens is it will take the tile of the same color that you took if it's available. And if it's not available, then it's going to take the most valuable tiles, just working down a list to see which ones it's going to take. So if I take a purple dragon tile, then it will take a purple dragon tile. And if it can take a pair, it will take a pair. And so it's essentially just discarding tiles out of the game that you can't collect. And because there's only a set number of each tile in the game, you have to be very, very aware of which tiles it will take based on its priority. And you have to plan out your turns to make sure that you have enough tiles in the color or the pattern that you need in order to earn the points. And the way that you earn points in Dragon Castle is when you take tiles from the center, you will place them on your own personal player board. And when you get 4 or more tiles that are the same color, then you will consolidate them by flipping them all to their white blank side of the tile, and then you can add shrine roofs on top of them, which will score you points depending on how high up it is. Once you've consolidated tiles, those become lower level bases that you can then play new tiles on top of. So you do have to consolidate tiles on your board so that you can start building up, because the higher the shrine is when you place it, the more it's worth. And the more tiles you can get to consolidate at one time, the more points you'll get. So it's a sliding scale of, if it's just the 4 tiles, it's going to be, I think, 3 points for 4 tiles. But if you can get it up to 8 tiles, then every tile is going to be worth more. So you want to try to consolidate big groups if you can. There's a lot of thinking going on in Dragon Castle, and this one came in at number 9 for me, primarily just because of the solo. The solo mode is okay. It's not bad, but it's also not great. It doesn't offer me a true opponent where I'm competing against someone else who's building up their own Dragon Castle, who's scoring points. You're just beating your own high score. And for the amount of setup that is involved in the physical copy of Dragon Castle, because you have to build that entire Dragon Castle base with all of those mahjong tiles by yourself before you can play, it just wasn't giving me the same rewarding feeling that some of the other games that I played give me at solo. Because Dragon Castle is available on Board Game Arena as well as on the digital app, if I really want to play Dragon Castle but I don't have someone else to play with, I'm just going to play those ways. I'll play on Board Game Arena with just anonymous players, or I'll just play against an AI on the app, and that'll be usually just as enjoyable. Although I do love Dragon Castle and it's certainly staying in the collection, it's one that I will be pulling out for multiplayer much more often than solo. So that is number 9, Dragon Castle. Coming in at number 8 is SOS Titanic. SOS Titanic was published by TGG Games and Matago. SOS Titanic was designed by Bruno Cathala and Ludovic Mablanc, and it's illustrated by Christian Bach. And SOS Titanic is a Klondike Solitaire style inspired game where you are attempting to rescue all of the passengers off of the famed Titanic before it sinks after striking the iceberg. So this is a fairly thematic game. The game plays out as, like I said, it's primarily a solo game, but it does include rules for 1 to 5 players where you play cooperatively. It's not a competitive game. If I remember correctly, this is definitely the second edition of the game, but I think the first edition was a solo only, or maybe 1 or 2 players. So it does allow for up to 5, but I have only played this solo and probably will only play it solo. So in SOS Titanic, you are setting up rows of cards where the bottom card is face up and all of the cards underneath it are face down in columns below a spiral bound book that shows the deck of the Titanic. And as you play through, there's certain conditions that you'll hit with your cards that will force you to turn pages in the Titanic booklet. And every time you turn a page, the Titanic sinks a little bit further into the ocean and some of the decks become flooded. And so essentially what you'll have happen is if there's any passengers still in those decks as they sink, you will move them over to the next deck up. You will shuffle everything in there together, put everything face down again, and start over. So you start burying cards into your columns on these decks. Your goal is, like I said, to get everyone off of the Titanic. It works in a very similar manner to Klondike Solitaire, where you are placing and moving passengers based on their suit, which is either first class or second class, as well as their numbers. So you have to place them in ascending order, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going up, and you have to move them off of the boat onto the lifeboats in order as well. So you have to start with 2, which are the little kids characters, 3, 4, 5. It moves up into the little bit older characters or passengers, into the women, and finally into the men and into the safety officers last. So there are 17 passengers in 2 of the suits and 13 in 2 of the suits, and you have to get all of them off to win. I have never won this game. There are also some special ability cards that you can get, and you will play with different crew members when you start the game. And what I found in solo in particular is that some of the crew members are more helpful than others. There were a few that I played with that didn't allow you to use any of the special ability cards, and that made it feel basically impossible. Everything would have just had to have been lined up perfectly out of the shuffle in order to win. But it still was very enjoyable. I really had a lot of fun with this game. It's one that's going to be staying in my collection. I will be playing this one solo. It's a really quick setup because you're just shuffling a deck of cards and setting the book out on the table. It plays very quickly, so it's one that I've played when I'm fixing dinner and I have everything kind of ready and cooking on the stove. I'll just pull it out, play one. It's a lot like playing Klondike Solitaire, where you can just pull it out, play. You can sometimes lose very quickly, or you can get more people off the boat. So that is SOS Titanic. If you haven't checked it out and you enjoy solo games in particular, and you liked playing or still like playing Klondike Solitaire, I would highly recommend seeing if you can get a copy of this. The artwork is really nice. It has that sort of classic feel. It looks great on the table. And there's a couple little Easter eggs too in there where some of the passenger cards on the ship look like the designers of the game. So that was fun as well. So that is my number 8, SOS Titanic. Coming in at number 7 is Sierra West. Sierra West was published by Board and Dice. It is designed by Johnny Pack Canton, and I don't remember who the artwork. The solo mode is by David Turchi, and I don't remember who the artwork is by, but this is a game for 1 to 4 players, and it is based in the American West. It has definitely a pretty strong theme of the American West. You have canoes and typical American wildlife, so you'll see like bears and raccoons and foxes and deer and those types of things in the game. There's fishing on the river. There's panning or mining for gold. There's banjos. There's all kinds of things that are just very sort of Americana in them. I grew up on the West Coast and have family in the West, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho area. So it's a little bit nostalgic for me to kind of think of where my family originally came from when playing this. And it's a really interesting game as far as mechanics. So essentially in Sierra West, there is a pyramid of cards that you build out in the center of the table that builds the Sierra mountain range, essentially. And what you will be doing is building up a smaller pyramid with 3 cards on your turn on your own individual player board. And each of the cards has 2 rows of actions on them, as well as an objective at the top of the card and potentially an animal that you would be able to trap, or in the solo mode case, your opponent Hastings would be able to potentially trap. And on your turn, you are going to take those 3 cards and you're going to arrange them onto your board so that 2 of them have the bottom level action showing and the top one has the top level action showing. And you will have 2 meeples that you use on your board, and each of them is going to run across either the bottom or the top trail, and you'll take the actions on those trails. And you can move these meeples in any order and any speed you want to. So you can move one of your meeples 2 actions, take those 2, then move your other one on the top, 1 or 2 or 3 or all the way across, and then come back and move the other one, or you can just leave it there and not finish going across, which sometimes makes sense because there's some hazards on some of those cards that you're playing. And then once you get across all the way, you will be able to potentially complete the objectives at the top of the card and move up on some tracks. And moving up on the tracks is one of the main ways that you're going to earn points. While you're doing this, you are also moving your wagon by spending resources across the trail. And as you move the wagon across the trail, it's going to increase your multiplier for the tracks that you're moving up. So you're moving up the tracks, you're moving across the wagon to increase a multiplier for your points. You're also using a third meeple of your color that's going to be moving and trekking up this mountainside that you built out with the cards. And when you get to a card that's face up, you can use an action to dig that card out and add that card to your deck. So it's also a little bit of a deck builder where you're adding these cards to your deck. They give you better actions or different actions that you can use. Mostly they're going to give you mode-specific actions because in this box there's actually 4 separate modes of play. It's not really modules in the sense of here's a base game and then you can add a module to it if you want. There are 4 modules and you will play with one of the 4. Each time they're not mix and match. It's just either you play with the apple mode or you play with the boating, the canoe, fishing mode. Like you'll play with one of them. So I did play all 4 of the modes during my solo challenge with my 5 plays. I did okay on some of the modes with solo, and then some of them were much more difficult. You are playing against an AI character called Hastings who has a deck of cards, and it allows you to still do some of the player interactions that would be in a multiplayer game. One of the main things being that you can still use your trapping action. So Hastings cards will display particular animals that are available, and you can choose to trap them when they're showing on his AI cards. But if there's no animal showing on his AI cards, you can't trap that turn. It would simulate all of the cards that your opponent's playing having animals that you've potentially already trapped. He will also trap animals from your cards, so you have to be very careful about how you play your cards. You can look and see if Hastings is planning to trap and plan for that by putting an animal he's already trapped in the spot that he's going to go and trap at. You can also follow along and go and get additional resources when Hastings moves up on some of those tracks, but he's going to be moving up the tracks. He's going to be moving his wagon across. He doesn't pay for anything. He's going to be digging cards out of the mountainside, which when the mountain gets depleted and the bottom row of cards gets filled in from the mountain is what's going to trigger the end of the game. So he does tend to push the end game pretty quickly. I actually really had a lot of fun with Sierra West as a solo. It's one that I will be keeping. It is definitely one I'm going to be playing again. I don't know if I would prefer it multiplayer or solo. The solo is actually pretty good. It is very challenging, and the modes are just different enough that they're fun to play, each of them. I have a lot of good games in this particular set of 10 for my solo challenge. So even though Sierra West is coming in at number 7 on my list, it still is an excellent game if you enjoy solos, if you enjoy very puzzly solos and a little bit of a unique card action play. This is one that I would recommend that you check out, see if you can find a copy and try it out, because it is different than everything else that I've played in my collection, and I had a lot of fun with it. So that is number 7, Sierra West. Coming in at number 6 is Transmissions. Transmissions is a recent Kickstarter game that I backed. This is from Crosscut Games, designer Adam West, and the artwork is by Matt Dixon. And the artwork is sort of the front leader here on this game. The artist was, from what I understand, kind of remembering from the Kickstarter, that it started with the artwork with these adorable little robots, and then Adam West wanted to make a game around them. And I think he did an excellent job. Like I said, this is my number 6 on my solo challenge. So this is a Rondell action selection set collection game, which is a perfect family weight game. In Transmissions, you are going to be moving robots. There's 4 different robots around a Rondell board that has, I believe it's 8 different action spaces that you can take, and you will be collecting resources, which are engrams and electricity or power tokens that you will be using to add ideas to your robots. So you're essentially building up these robots, and you can add different abilities to the robots. You can add different items to the robots, so they'll collect little junkyard items like mismatched socks or coffee mugs or dice are in there. There's all kinds of different things that they're going to be collecting. You could also use your resources to buy pipes and build out a network of pipes in a little bit of a tile placement mini game off to the side. You can collect like special forest cards, which give you one-time abilities, but you have to be careful because those forest cards have a specific number of acorns at the bottom, and the player who has the fewest acorns collected at the end of the game will get a bonus because they used less of those cards. And you will be trying to fill up your different robots. So everyone has a small player board, and it has all 4 of the robots depicted on them. And you will be, like I said, adding ideas, for example, to your robots. And as you add ideas, when you move that particular robot, then you can take that additional bonus action. So for example, maybe if I move the blue robot and I collect a white engram resource, then I also get to collect a blue one or something like that. But each of the players in the game will be building out these robots on their own personal board differently. So when I move the blue robot, it might do one thing, but when the next person moves the blue robot, it will do something else, or maybe nothing special. I don't know if I mentioned this, I probably didn't, but the robots are not owned by any particular player. Just because I usually play blue, I'm not the blue robot. Anyone can move the blue robot on their turn. And that's done through a hand of cards. So everyone has a hand of cards and they will shuffle them up and have 3 available to choose from. And you will pick a card from your hand on your turn and it will tell you to either move a specific robot, meaning blue, yellow, red robot, whichever, or it will tell you you can move a robot from a particular location. So it might show the pipes location. And so if there's 2 robots in the pipes location, I could move either one of those. Each of the robots moves a little bit differently. Some will move 4 spaces, some will move 2, some will move 3. And so you're just moving these robots around this rondel. You're collecting your resources, you're turning them in, you're filling up your robot board, you're building out your pipes. It's definitely a point salad style game where you're earning points from all kinds of different things. The solo mode is very simple to run. Essentially, all of the decks that you are not using from the other players, you will shuffle them all together and you will just flip one over each time that the AI player named Harvey is supposed to be taking his turn. So when Harvey takes his turn, you flip the card over and you will move all of the robots that are indicated by that card. So if you flip over one that has a specific robot, great, you only move that one robot. You move it the max number of spaces that the robot can move, and then you take a specific Harvey action at the location. All of the actions are very simple, very straightforward. He will take ideas, he will take items, he will take pipes. It depends on which robot will tell you which location in the display to take those items from, or he will add resources to the board. And in the solo mode, Harvey's going to be adding resources to the board because you can't collect resources outside of what's available on the board. So it's a little bit of a closed economy in the game for the solo mode. And one of the difficult things is at the end of the game, any resources that are left on the board at the end will count against you for points. So you want to be very efficient in how you are using the resources, and you don't want to let it build up on the board to where you have this surplus of resources sitting there. So when you spend resources, you have the option, you can either play them back onto the board so that you have them to go and collect later if they're running short, or you can discard them out of the game into the resource trays. So that's another just kind of nice little puzzle in there of when do I discard things back to the board. You can't split them up either. So if the cost has 4 different types of resources, all 4 of them have to go back onto the board, even though maybe you only wanted one of them to go back onto the board. I did find in transmissions with the solo mode, it can be somewhat swingy just depending on the luck of where the robots are at and which cards Harvey draws in which order. I've had games where Harvey just goes and, gets all of the pipe tiles collected. And so he just earns a ton of points from those pipe tiles before you can catch up. I've also had games where he didn't collect very much of anything and I was able to win fairly easily. But most of the games that I played were kind of middle of the line. It was close at the end, whether it was me or Harvey winning. So Transmissions is a super adorable game. I really, really enjoyed my time with it. The solo is fun. I have played this also with my oldest daughter who is 9, and she enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a little bit much for her to concentrate on if there's anything else going on in the house. So it's one that if her sister's around and playing, she's not going to be up for it because it's just a little bit too long. But it's one that I can see us playing a lot as the girls get just a little bit older. And so this is another one definitely staying in the collection. Very fun solo, very fun multiplayer. So that is number 6, Transmissions. Okay, coming in at number 5 is Space Explorers. Space Explorers is a game that is designed by Yuri Zurovlev. I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name. This was originally published from the Russian company Crowd Games, and in the States it is distributed by 25th Century Games. Space Explorers is a game that I picked up a while ago with just the base game box. I absolutely loved the theme and the artwork. It's just such a stunningly beautiful game when you're just looking at it. It is primarily a card game. It is set collection and a little bit of engine building. People have sometimes described this as like a Splendor killer. I don't know that it's a Splendor killer, but it definitely has sort of that same Splendor vibes of you are collecting cards in front of you, you're building out your tableau. Depending on what you have in front of you, it will let you do different abilities. You are building up an engine in the same way. And then the biggest sort of similarity between Space Explorers and Splendor is that as you build up cards of a specific color in front of you, you will be able to claim project tiles from the center, which require a specific number of each of those color cards. So it's very similar to Splendor in that way of how the noble cards work. But aside from that, it does play quite a bit differently than Splendor. I would say I actually like this one better than Splendor. For the solo challenge, I also was able to play with this Age of Ambition expansion that is coming out, I believe, this year. It was funded last year on, I think it was on GameFound directly, but this was crowdfunded last year for this expansion, Age of Ambition. I was sent the expansion by 25th Century Games to check out, so big thanks to them for sending that over, because I was able to play all of my solo challenge games with the expansion. So Space Explorers didn't originally come with a solo mode. It had a solo mode that was available during the original Kickstarter, I believe, and then I was able to get a copy of it kind of after the fact when I picked up the game. And it's a very simple solo mode that was included, the first version of the game. It had a track that was just like a puzzle cardboard track that you'd pull out, and you would set up the project tiles or those goal tiles on it. And any time that after you take your turn, you're going to collect a card for the AI character to put into their space hub. And you collect a tile based on a marker. The first player marker is used to show you which of the tiles the AI player is going to recruit into their hub. And so you can kind of manipulate that based on which ones you take on your turn. But they will collect those recruits into their hub. Any of the projects that have the color recruit that they took will move down the line. And as soon as it moves all the way off the end, then the project will get claimed by the AI and they'll get those points. So you have to be very cognizant of which cards you're letting the AI take, because if it keeps moving those down really fast, you won't have a chance to claim them. And then you also will be giving those points to the AI. I found that the solo mode in the base game was extremely difficult, even on the easiest level, because the AI is literally recruiting someone every single turn, and you are not necessarily going to be recruiting someone into your hub every turn, because you have to have resources either from tiles that you have collected in front of you or from resources that are showing on recruits that you have previously acquired. And so there's a lot of planning involved, and the AI character will recruit faster because they recruit every single turn. So you have to move really quickly. It's definitely an efficiency puzzle. I'm terrible at the base game solo. I lose all the time, but it still is super fun. What I really enjoyed about my solo plays, and the reason why this made it up to number 5 on my list, is actually the Age of Ambition expansion content. So the Age of Ambition expansion is a modular expansion. So it actually includes 8 different modules that you can add into your game. And in the rulebook, it recommends that you add in 3 modules per game, and you can just mix and match. They actually included some cards where you can just shuffle them up and it will tell you which ones to add in. Some of the modules are more intense in the way that they change the game up and add new rules and really modify the gameplay. And then some of them are really quite basic. So in my plays, I tended to pick 1 or 2 of the large modules and then, 1 or 2 of the smaller modules to add in there. They're all different kinds of things. Some of them make it easier to achieve your goals. Some of them make it a little bit harder. There's one in there that is impending crisis, I think is what it's called. And it actually makes it so that you can't take particular actions or you can't recruit particular people while that crisis is ongoing. So it just kind of tweaks the game in different ways. It also introduces a slightly modified solo mode. Instead of having the long track of the solo mode from the original, it replaced it with a small tile, and the tiles are actually going to move around in a circle. It also modified where the tiles started, so project tiles that have a higher threshold for completion or more unique recruit types will be higher up on the starting, and so you have a little bit more time to complete those, which made it slightly easier. I was able to win, I think, once or twice with the Age of Ambition expansion, but it still is very difficult to beat as a solo game. It plays really quickly, which I like, and like I said, the artwork is just absolutely beautiful. It has a great look on the table, and I am really looking forward to continuing to play Space Explorers. If you have the base game and you were on the fence about getting the Age of Ambition expansion when it came out, I would highly recommend that you check it out. It really does add a lot to the game, and I am really happy to have it in my collection. I did actually back the Kickstarter so that I'll be getting a full version of the expansion as well as the wooden resource tiles instead to replace the cardboard chits and the resource bag. So just getting a couple more things for it. Fantastic game. Number 5 is Space Explorers. Number 4 is Verdant. Verdant is a kind of an abstract strategy plant game. It is published by Flat Out Games and AEG. This one has several designers on it: Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, Aaron Messburn, Kevin Russ, and Sean Stankovich. And it's illustrated by Beth Sobel. So Verdant is the third in the kind of nature-themed line from Flat Out Games, the team over there. Verdant follows up Cascadia and Calico, both of which are also in my collection. And Verdant is a card game where you are going to be arranging plants and rooms in a 3x5 grid in front of you throughout the course of the game. So each player would start with 2 cards, 1 plant and 1 room in front of them. And then over the course of the game, they're going to be drafting a room card and a token from the center. So it's an open drafting game. You will be drafting these tokens and drafting these cards in order to match up the sun conditions from the room to the plants that you're putting in the room. To add verdancy to the plants, you have to collect a certain amount of verdancy on each of the plants in order to pot that plant and earn victory points for it. You will also use the tokens to add bonus points for set collections for different items or objects in the rooms. You will add bonus points by matching the color of the item to the color of the room where you place it. Some of the tiles or the tokens are just used to add verdancy to plants so that you can complete ones with higher verdancy requirements than what you'd be able to do just by placing them next to rooms. So Verdant is a very, very, very simple, quick to play solo game. It is technically a beat your own score game, but one of the things that I love about the games that Flat Out has been putting out, especially in this like nature themed line, is that they include in the rule book scenarios and sort of like a mini campaign that you can complete. So what you'll find in the rule book is a list of scenarios that tells you particular objective or goal cards to play with, specific scores that you have to meet or exceed to win, and in some cases, different special rules. So in one of the games that I played, you weren't allowed to use the hand trowel tokens. So you could collect them, but you couldn't actually use them. So it adds just that little bit of a twist to the gameplay where you're having to think about something different. And I've just had so much fun with this. It is one of those games that I would consider a comfort game. It is one that's very chill. You can just pull it out on a weeknight, play it. It's not going to require a ton of brain power to play it from a rule standpoint, but it still is puzzly enough that you're going to have a good time with it. It's very sort of in the line of like a Sudoku puzzle or a crossword puzzle. It gives me that same feeling of it's very casual, it's very simple, but it still is giving me enough to think about that it feels satisfying in the end. It does have a little bit more of the sort of diminishing options that people saw in Calico from the same company, where Cascadia has a very similar drafting mechanism where you're drafting a tile and a token at the same time. In Verdant, it's a card and a token at the same time. But in Cascadia, your board literally just opens up as you play. There's more and more places where you can put things that might be a good option, and it feels very open, like I said, as you play. Verdant is more in the line of Calico, where it starts out very open, where you have a lot of choices and you just kind of have to pick a direction. But then once you've picked that direction, each turn feels tighter and tighter, and the options that are out on the board, less and less of them may be good for what you're going for or fit into your room. It does have some mitigation options where you can spend green thumb tokens to discard cards that you're not using, to discard tokens that you don't want. So that's always an option as well. Verdant plays for the solo very similar to Cascadia and Calico, where that drafting row just works as a conveyor belt, and anything that you don't pick that's in that last row gets discarded and everything's going to slide down. And then you also, there are different pots that you can use when you reach a verdancy for your plants, and the pots are worth different values. The faster you complete the verdancy on your plants, you'll be able to earn those high earning pots for them. But as the game goes on, those pots will also go away along with the cards in the offer row. So that is my number 4, which is Verdant from Flat Out Games and AEG Games. A fantastic one if you like Calico or Cascadia or both of them, or just like games about plants. This is one to check out for sure. Number 3 is Cloud Age. Cloud Age is designed by Alexander Pfister. It's published by Nanox Games and Capstone Games. Cloud Age is I think it's the 3rd Alexander Pfister game that I have played. And if I remember correctly, both of the other 2 were in my earlier challenges, Great Western Trail and Blackout Hong Kong. But Cloud Age was one that I hadn't heard a lot about, and it didn't seem to be one of the more well-loved Alexander Pfisters out there. I just don't hear about it a lot. But it intrigued me because it is a campaign game that can be played solo. And sometimes campaign games, it's not a legacy game. It does have some sort of legacy-like components to it where you'll be adding tiles and adding cards to the game as you go by, and through the campaign you're going to be adding things, but you're not destroying anything, so you can just reset it whenever you want to. But that's the part that really sort of intrigued me at first, and then after watching a few playthroughs, I really liked the card play in Cloud Age, and when I got it to the table as a solo, it did not disappoint. I have only played Cloud Age as a solo game. I did play through the campaign, or at least part of it. I've played the first 5 out of, I believe there's 8 games in the campaign, and each one of them was just so much fun. I am not very good at it. The campaign has you looking and comparing your endgame score with the objectives that you completed, and it gives you a number of stars. Like I said, I'm not quite finished with a full campaign yet, but I can pretty much guarantee that it will not be a end campaign victory for me. I will not have earned enough stars, but it's one that, like I said, because you can reset it and make different choices, you can go through the campaign as many times as you want to. So Cloud Age is one that I also have recently talked about in my best new to me games of 2022. So if you watch that series, you can go back and hear me talk a little bit more about Cloud Age. So I'll try to be somewhat more brief in this video. And if you want to know more, I sort of rambled on for quite a while about it in my new to me video earlier. But Cloud Age is a hand management, resource management game. There's a little bit of combat in it. There's all kinds of different mechanisms going on. You're going to be moving up tracks. You're going to be earning income. You're going to be improving your airships. There's just all these fun little details that go together to make a fantastic game. And the solo works really, really well. It plays very smoothly. What you're going to do is you'll have a small board off to the side, and you'll use one of the unused player colors to mark each of the rounds. And what it does is it simulates the action selection phase of each round, where normally in a multiplayer game, you get to follow the actions that the other players are taking. So if they take an action to build something, then they get to build 2, but you get to build 1. And so the solo board just lets you, before you take your regular action turn, it tells you, okay, on this round, you get to build and you get to whatever the second action is. They're all different. So it's going to let you, collect resources and build, or it's going to let you just collect resources. And then you'll take your regular turn. So it's very, very simple to run as a solo game. There isn't a lot of upkeep. In fact, there's basically no upkeep. It is more or less a beat your own score, because it is going to give you a range of scores that you need to achieve. And you also have objective cards that you're trying to meet. And based on how high you score, you'll earn a particular number of stars towards your campaign victory. And that's how you'll play the game. I just really loved the card play in Cloud Age. I loved the small amount of deck building in your first deck, your navigation deck, trying to get rid of those 0 cards that start in your deck and trying to build that up so that you have more movement and more potential strength when you're going in and doing the combat as you're moving your airship across the main board. I love the multi-use cards as resources. So the cards that you're playing out into your tableau to improve your score or improve your airship, you have to pay cards in order to play those cards. So you're having to discard one every time you play one. So you really have to think about your management of those cards and thinking of those as a resource, which is a lot of fun for me. But that is Cloud Age. Like I said, I talked a lot more about exactly how it works in my new to me video, and you can check that one out as well. But that is number 3, Cloud Age. Coming in at number 2 is Praga Kaput Regni. Praga Kaput Regni is a game that was designed by Vladimir Suchy, and it is published by Delicious Games and Rio Grande Games. This one has an insert in it, so I'm going to hold it so it doesn't completely fall apart on me. But Praga Kaput Regni is a really fun and sort of unique game. I didn't know a lot about it at first. When I heard about it, I had really only played Underwater Cities, and this one didn't seem anything like it, and it sort of isn't. But it is similar in the sense that if you've played games by Vladimir Suchy before, he is one of the masters of efficiency puzzle games. You really have to plan out every single one of your moves in his games, particularly in this one, to make sure that you're getting the most of your actions. I'm going to set this one down. So in Praga Kaput Regni, you are working to build out the city of Prague, And you are doing this by selecting tiles from an action wheel. This is another one that I talked about in my top new to me games of 2022. So you can, again, go check out that video if you want more information about how it plays. But I have only played this one solo, and I've played both the solo mode that's included in the original rules instruction, as well as the Peter Parlor solo mode, which you can print from the Delicious Games website, which includes a deck of 5 cards that will tell you which of the action tiles from the action wheel to take out. And then it also has you placing out buildings into the city and removing tiles from the available options. So it sort of simulates another player in that way, but it doesn't require a whole lot of maintenance or upkeep to take care of it. I do like the Peter Parlor solo mode better than the just out of the box beat your own score solo mode. Praga Kaput Regni is in both of the modes, though, a beat your own score. They give you a target score of what they say is a good score for the game, which I think is 140 if I remember correctly, and it's very challenging to beat. I think I managed the 140 once in my plays, but it's just so much fun. I really enjoy the action selection wheel, how that works. So you're having to pick one of the actions that you can afford. You ideally want to pick one of the free actions, but as you and the AI don't take the actions, they become more lucrative and to the point where you could get victory points for them. It's not very often in the solo game that you'll get a lot of victory points for anything because the AI will be taking those tiles from the front, which does pretty well simulate a real player. Most real players are not going to let you get all the way over to an extra 5 points for just taking something they didn't want. But I like the action selection wheel. And then I also like the difficult decisions that you have to make about which path to take, because you can't do everything in the game. You can't go up and build the hunger wall and build out all of the buildings into the city. You can't build out your wall all the way or upgrade all of your actions all the way either. So you have to really pick and choose the best ones that are going to work together to get you the most points. And I just find those decisions so engaging. I really had a good time trying to figure this one out, and I still wouldn't say that I've figured it out, but it's very, very enjoyable. It's a pretty quick setup. Like I said, I have an insert in mind from Folded Space, so it's very quick to just pull the insert out. It has all the tiles already organized for you into the different stages of the game, and so you can just put them out, put it right back into the insert as you're playing, and put it back into the box. But that is my number 2, which is Praga Kaput Regni. All right, that brings us to number 1. If you have been around the channel for a while and you were watching my top new to me games from 2022, when you saw this video start, I'm sure that you were not surprised to see that Rococo Deluxe Edition is coming in at number 1 for my solo plays in this most recent challenge. Rococo Deluxe Edition was my number 1 new to me game in 2022 as well. This game is designed by Matthias Kramer, Luis Maltz, and Stefan Maltz. Matthias Kramer is the designer of Glenmore 2 as well, which is my number 1 game of all time. I'm going to set this one down as well. So in Rococo, you are a dressmaker in France who is designing dresses for the royalty and the gentry, probably is what they were called, in France, going to a ball for Louis, I think the 14th. In Rococo, you are going to be doing deck building, which is a mechanism that I really enjoy. In Rococo, the deck building, though, is very intriguing to me in the sense that as you add cards, you buy cards, which are employees, to add to your deck, they don't go into your discard pile. They actually go into your active hand of cards. So as you buy cards, you're actually increasing the number of actions that you get to take that turn. So it's a fun little planning on how do I decide when I'm going to buy particular employees, because it does give you those extra turns and potentially the ability to hire even more employees for your deck. But Rococo is one of the sort of surprises for me. I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't overly enthralled by the theme, and I wasn't overly excited about the prospect of area majority, which is not one of my favorite mechanisms. There's a few games that I like that have area majority, and it definitely falls into area majority as opposed to area control games. I'm not a big fan of games where you go in and you think you have the majority and then you can get kicked out by someone else unexpectedly. And in Rococo, it really truly is an area majority where there are only so many spots. You cannot be kicked out of them. So you can plan and truly go in and take over one of the halls. And once you have the majority there, no one else can come and kick you out if everything's filled in, which I like. It also has some resource management. It has a lot of elements in it that really come down to timing your actions as efficiently as possible, which I had a lot of fun with. The solo mode in particular is a AI mode with a deck of cards, and this is one of the few ones that actually was not a beat your own score. The AI does have a score at the end of the game that you have to beat. If you beat it, you win. If you don't beat it, then you lose. The AI has, like I said, a deck of cards. It's a fairly hefty deck of cards, so you don't know if the AI is going to kind of go and do a little bit of everything on their turn, or if potentially they're going to take the same action four times in a row. On your turn, you are going to have 3 cards to play. On the AI's turn, they will have 4 cards to play every turn, and that's if they don't go and do any of the hiring actions. So even if they don't hire, they're going to have one more turn than you every single round of the game. It does make it very important for you to go out and hire and make sure that you're getting those extra turns in where you can. And the AI on this game can be fairly unpredictable, but I found that even though the AI, how they were playing was unpredictable, their scores weren't that swingy. Like, they were pretty consistent on where they scored. And so you have a pretty good idea after a couple of plays what that threshold is that you likely are going to have to achieve in order to win. It can be challenging to plan around which of the halls the AI is going to go for, but there's certainly ways that you can jump out early and secure spaces for yourself, like the fireworks displays, that will really help you in the end bump those points up. This particular edition comes with the jewelry box expansion and several other sort of mini expansions of fancy dresses and different alternate dresses. I have actually played with none of those so far. In all of my 5 plays, I just played with the base game. And then I also have played this one multiplayer with my mom while she was here, and she really enjoyed this game. It felt very similar at 2 players to playing with the AI. It was somewhat more predictable, but not a ton, because you just kind of never know what the other player is holding and when they're going to take which of the different actions. So that is my number 1. If you want to hear a little bit more about Rococo, definitely check out my video from my top games from 2022. I certainly talk more about it in that one, but it is fantastic. If you have any interest in the theme or in just area majority or area control game with deck building and hand management, this is one to certainly give a try if you have a chance. I know that this one in particular is very deluxe. It is expensive. It's not going to be in everyone's budget, but if you get a chance, you're at a convention somewhere where they have a copy of this version of the game, check it out, give it a try, see if you like it. I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. My number 1 is Rococo. So that's the end of my final 10 by 5 challenge for my solo games in 2022. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. I have already started my first 10 by 5 solo challenge for 2023. The information about that is already up on my Instagram channel. You can follow along there to see what games are on the list for the first 4 months of this year, as well as see some sneak previews about what I've been playing so far. I have actually played all 10 of the games already in January that are on the list, and am working my way through those. Also in 2023, I will be doing a challenge to play all of the solo games in my collection. So every solo game that you saw on today's list will be included in that challenge, as well as all of the games from the previous 2 lists and everything else in the collection that I have that can be played solo. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed the video. Until next time, have fun playing games with your family, with your friends, and even solo. Bye.